These are the 7 levels of banned NBA players. And it starts at the bottom with 1-game suspensions. But as this video goes on, the punishments get harsher, the stories get darker, and the players go from simple technical meltdowns to half-season bans to multi-year removals, all the way to lifetime exile from the league. By the time we reach level 7, we're talking about players who were erased from the NBA with no chance of ever coming back. Level 1, 1-game suspensions. These are the players who got hit with the lightest bans the NBA can hand out. 1-game suspensions. The smallest punishments, but some of the most embarrassing moments. And to start, we have Draymond Green, the king of chaos. Draymond's 1-game suspension in the 2016 finals came after a string of flagrant escalations, capped off by a groin shot that flipped the entire championship. The league ruled it as a flagrant accumulation, but everyone knew the truth. Draymond's temper cost Golden State more than one night. It shifted a dynasty. Next is Grayson Allen, the NBA's modern-day trouble magnet. His 1-game ban came after a dangerous mid-air hit on Alex Caruso, breaking Caruso's wrist and sparking league-wide outrage. Allen already had a college history of tripping incidents, so the NBA treated this as a pattern, not an accident. We also have Rajon Rondo, who earned a 1-game suspension for confronting and verbally attacking a referee. Rondo has always been brilliant and volatile, and this was one of the nights where that volatility won. The league hit him fast, sending a message: refs aren't fair game. Then comes Dwight Howard, who didn't need a dirty play to get suspended. He simply piled up technicals. Too many, too fast, too loud. Howard's 1-game ban came from crossing the league's tech limit, a sign of how unhinged his late career frustrations became. And finally, DeMarcus Cousins, one of the most emotional players of the last decade. Cousins' 1-game suspensions came from a mix of ejections, confrontations, and technical explosions. He didn't just cross lines, he sprinted over them. Level 1 was just the warm-up. What's waiting in Level 2 makes these look harmless. Level 2, multi-game bans, 5 to 10 games. Now we step into suspensions that actually change seasons, 5 to 10 games. These aren't accidents or heat-of-the-moment slip-ups. These are patterns, repeated issues. And first, we have Metta World Peace, a player whose name promised peace, but whose elbow delivered the opposite. In 2012, Metta's vicious blindside elbow to James Harden's head earned a 7-game suspension and sent shockwaves through the league. Harden dropped instantly. The replay looped for days, and the NBA made it clear even Metta's reputation couldn't protect him this time. Next is J.R. Smith, a walking highlight reel and a walking headache. Smith served a 10-game suspension for violating the league's anti-drug policy, but that wasn't the only problem. His on-court antics, untying opponents' shoelaces, reckless fouls, late-night decisions, made the suspension feel inevitable. JR always hovered between brilliance and chaos, and Level 2 is exactly where he lived. Then we have Zach Randolph, one of the toughest enforcers of his era. Z-Bo's 8-game suspension came from a locker room confrontation that escalated into a misdemeanor case. Randolph had rebuilt his image in Memphis, but this incident reminded everyone of the fire he carried. Fire that sometimes burned too hot. And finally, Dion Waiters, whose suspension became an instant meme. A 10-game ban for a THC edible meltdown on the team plane. Waiters reportedly had a panic episode at 30,000 feet after consuming a gummy from someone on the roster, forcing emergency landing protocols and sparking one of the strangest scandals in recent NBA history. The Heat suspended him for conduct detrimental to the team, and his career was never the same. Level 2 is where mistakes turn into problems. But Level 3? That's where careers start falling apart. Level 3, 15 plus. Game suspensions. Now we enter the territory where suspensions don't just disrupt a season, they derail careers. 15 games, 20 games. Entire chunks of years lost. And the first name here is O.J. Mayo, the cautionary tale of an elite talent undone by repeated violations. Mayo started with a 10-game drug suspension, but that was only the beginning. The league hit him again with a harsher penalty after another violation, pushing him into the 20-plus game range. Each ban pushed him further out of the league's orbit until the day came when he wasn't allowed back at all. One of the cleanest scorers of his draft class vanished under level 3 weight. Next is Larry Sanders, a player who could have been one of the best defensive anchors of his generation. Sanders was suspended multiple times for drug policy violations, each one piling on top of stress, pressure, and a severe mental health battle. His suspensions weren't just penalties. They were symptoms of a collapsing relationship with the league. Eventually, Sanders walked away from basketball entirely, leaving behind a career that felt both brief and brilliant. Then we have Nick Calathes, whose suspension came out of nowhere. 20 games for a PED violation, no prior warnings, no failed tests on record. Calathes denied intentionally taking anything illegal and even claimed the banned substance came from an over-the-counter supplement. None of it mattered. The NBA hit him with a full 20-game ban, one of the harshest first offenses in modern league history. And finally, Chris Andersen, long before he was Birdman, the fan favorite. Early in his career, Andersen was removed from the NBA for violating the league's drug policy, effectively banned for 2 years. It wasn't formally labeled a suspension, it was a removal from the program. He had to reapply for reinstatement, pass extensive evaluations, and rebuild his reputation from scratch. It was one of the toughest paths back the NBA had ever created. And Andersen's return later on wasn't a comeback. It was a miracle. Level 3 is where careers crack. Level 4 is where they break. Level 4, half-season bans. This is where the NBA stops handing out punishments and starts sending messages. Half-season bans, 50 games, 60 games. These aren't slip-ups anymore. These are actions that threaten the league's image at its core. And the first name at this level is the one everyone remembers, Gilbert Arenas, one of the league's greatest scorers, and one of its most explosive scandals. Arenas was suspended 50 games after bringing guns into the Wizards' locker room during a team dispute. The story dominated national headlines. The league said it wasn't just dangerous, it was unacceptable. The Wizards' franchise collapsed overnight, and Arenas' career never truly recovered. But Arenas wasn't alone. Javaris Crittenton, the other player involved in that infamous locker room incident, was suspended for the rest of the season. Crittenton's NBA career was already hanging by a thread, and the gun incident cut it completely. He never played another NBA game. Years later, his off-court life spiraled even further, a reminder of how fast a promising career can vaporize. And then comes Latrell Sprewell, the original Level 4 case. Sprewell was handed a massive 68-game suspension, effectively the entire season, after choking his coach, P.J. Carlesimo, during a Warriors practice. The NBA had never seen anything like it. A star player putting both hands on the head coach, dragging him across the floor. The league banned him for the rest of the year and voided his contract. Sprewell returned eventually and played well, but his name was permanently branded by that moment. Level 4 is where the NBA draws a line in steel. But Level 5? That's where players lose entire years of their prime. Level 5, 1-year bans. Now we reach the point where the NBA doesn't just punish you, it erases you for an entire year. Full season removals. Prime years gone forever. And first is the most infamous suspension in league history. Ron Artest, in the aftermath of the Malice at the Palace. Artest was suspended 86 games, the rest of the regular season and the entire playoffs, the longest on-court suspension ever handed down. One leap into the stands, one punch thrown at the wrong fan, one riot that changed league security forever. Artest lost millions. Indiana lost their title window, and the NBA rewrote how games are policed because of one night. Next is Kermit Washington, whose punishment almost matched it in scale and impact. Washington was suspended for nearly an entire season after delivering the punch that shattered Rudy Tomjanovich's face, skull, and career. It was one of the most violent moments in sports history. A single hit that left Tomjanovich bleeding on the court and doctors unsure he would survive. Washington's suspension didn't just punish him. It reshaped how the NBA handles dangerous physical conduct. And then there's Chris "Birdman" Anderson, who faced one of the rarest punishments the NBA has ever handed out: a full-year removal during a league investigation, effectively treating him as ineligible to play until the case was resolved. Anderson lost his entire season, his contract, and his reputation in one blow. When the investigation was finally settled, he was cleared. But the NBA's one-year ban had already taken a season he could never get back. Few players ever returned from a lost year. Birdman did, but the cost was enormous. Level 5 is where careers freeze. Level 6 is where they disappear. Level 6, multi-year or indefinite bans. This is where the NBA stops suspending players and starts removing them. Multi-year bans, indefinite bans. Careers wiped off the map because the league decides the player can't come back. Not yet, maybe not ever. And the most famous modern case is O.J. Mayo. After years of warnings, violations, and short-term suspensions, Mayo was finally hit with the nuclear option: a 2-year ban from the NBA for violating the league's drug program. Not 10 games, not 20, 2 full seasons. Mayo wasn't allowed to sign, practice, or even be around a team facility. By the time he became eligible again, his prime was gone. The NBA had moved on. Next is Tariq Evans, a former Rookie of the Year whose career took a shocking turn. Evans received an indefinite ban for violating the league's anti-drug program, one of the harshest penalties the NBA can issue. The league didn't give a timeline, no return window, just an open-ended lockout from professional basketball. Evans spent years away from the league, fighting for reinstatement, and the message was clear. This wasn't about punishment. It was about protection of the league's image. And then comes Roy Tarpley, the original Level 6 cautionary tale. Tarpley was a dominant big man with all-star talent, but multiple multi-year bans for alcohol and drug violations ended what could have been a legendary career. Tarpley was suspended, reinstated, banned again, and removed once more. A devastating cycle that stretched across seasons. Each time he returned, he showed flashes of brilliance. And each time, off-court battles pulled him right back out of the league. Tarpley became the example for every future case. Talent doesn't outweigh violations forever. Level 6 players don't just lose seasons, they lose entire chapters of their lives. But Level 7, that's the end of the story. Forever. Level 7, permaban, never returned. This is the final level, where the NBA doesn't suspend you or remove you or wait for reinstatement. This is where the league locks the door forever. Careers end here. Reputations die here. Nobody comes back from Level 7. The clearest example is Javaris Crittenton. After the locker room gun scandal ended his season, Crittenton never returned to the NBA. The league didn't reinstate him, teams didn't call, and his life spiraled into legal trouble so severe that basketball became a distant memory. A promising guard turned into one of the saddest collapses in NBA history. A career permanently gone. Next is Roy Tarpley, whose Level 6 battles eventually pushed him to the final tier. After multiple multi-year bans, the NBA delivered its harshest ruling, a lifetime ban. Tarpley was prohibited from ever returning, no matter how well he played overseas or how hard he tried to rebuild. One of the most gifted big men of his era was erased from the league entirely. Then we go further back to Jack Molinas, the player whose gambling involvement shook the NBA in the 1950s. Molinas was permanently banned for point shaving and illegal betting, making him one of the earliest examples of the league drawing a hard line. The scandal shook the foundation of professional basketball, and the NBA made sure he never returned. Another victim of that era was Roger Brown, banned before he even played an NBA game because of alleged association with a known gambler. Brown wasn't convicted of anything. He wasn't even formally accused of wrongdoing. But the league saw the connection and shut the door. Brown later became an ABA legend, but the NBA ban never lifted. He was punished forever for proximity, not action. Then there's Terry Furlow, whose career ended under the shadow of drug violations and a tragic death shortly after leaving the league. Furlow's fall wasn't a formal lifetime ban, but the NBA had effectively moved on from him before he ever got the chance to rebuild. His story sits at this level not because of punishment, but because his career was permanently cut short by the same demons that ended his time in the league. And finally, a contextual reminder of how severe Level 7 is. The offenders in the Ben Wilson case. Individuals whose actions shook the basketball world and ensured they would never be part of the sports ecosystem again. Not a suspension. Not a ban. A permanent exile from the game entirely. Level 7 isn't about rules. It's about endings. These are the players and the stories the NBA never allowed back.